companies. First of all, I want to talk about the importance of education. You see, in the world today, we go to school for academic education, reading and writing. Now that's very, very important. My poor dad was a PhD, the head of education in the state of Hawaii, and he really stressed at the importance of academic education, and it is. Unfortunately, being the superintendent of education's son, I wasn't the brightest kid around, and I did flunk out of high school twice because I had a hard time reading and writing. Now, I did graduate from college. I do have a Bachelor of Science degree, but I'm not very good at academic education. Professional education is whether you become, a doctor or a mechanic or a web programmer or whatever you do. So professional education is very important, and my mother wanted me to be a doctor, but because my academic grades were so bad, she says, well, I guess you won't be a doctor. And the third type of education that's required, especially today, to be successful is financial education. And unfortunately, our school systems do not teach us much about money. For some reason, our school systems seem to think, that money might be the root of all evil or something. Yet to be successful in the world today, financial education is extremely important. Because of this lack of financial education, we see the rich getting excessively rich. Today we have kids who are 20 years old who are billionaires, and guys my age, after working 40 years, have nothing to show for it. So the gap between the rich and the poor is dangerously extreme. Many of the middle class are going from middle class to poor. So that's why financial education is crucial today if you want to, keep your head above water. Because ultimately, this is your greatest asset. You are responsible for your education and what goes in your head. And what the Rich Dad Company does is provide the financial education my rich dad gave me. When I was just 9 years old, my rich dad began to teach me to be a rich man playing the game of Monopoly. And he said the formula for great wealth is found on this great game board, and most of us know the formula for great wealth. It's 4 greenhouses, 1 red hotel. So as a little boy at 9 years old, I learned that. And today, even though I wasn't good academically, I'm not too strong professionally, I'm a wealthy person because my rich dad took the time to teach me the importance of financial education. So to be successful today, we need academic, professional, and financial education. And financial education is what the Rich Dad Company is all about. Asset. So in today's world, if you want to be rich, you have to know the difference between assets versus liabilities. One of the reasons so many people are struggling financially today is simply because they're calling their liabilities assets, such as your house is not an asset, your car is not an asset, and things like that. So very simply, when I was a young boy, my rich dad taught me, he says, you have to understand a financial statement. So this is an income statement, this is a balance sheet. Now this is overly simplified. He says what creates something to be an asset is very simply assets, cash flow money into your pocket. And a liability takes money from your pocket. So for most people, their houses are not assets or liabilities because every month it takes money to live in that house. Even those who say, well, I don't have any debt on my house, I've paid it off. Look, you still have insurance, still have upkeep, you still have maintenance. So let me explain this. I'm not saying don't buy a house or don't buy this and all this. I said if this is a house and I rent the house out and every month it's putting money in my pocket more than my expenses, then that house is an asset. Now that very same house, if it goes unrented or somebody trashes it or whatever they do, that very same house can be a liability. So a house can be an asset or a liability depending upon the most important word in business. It's called cash flow. Once again, if cash flows into your pocket, it's an asset. If cash flows out, it's a liability. Think of it this way. If you stop working today, how much cash keeps flowing in? That's from assets. And if cash keeps flowing out, that's a liability. So I'm not saying don't buy a house. I'm just saying don't call a liability an asset. And that's what makes... The next thing I want to cover with you is one of the most important lessons my rich dad gave me, and it was called the cash flow quadrant. And what my rich dad explained to me is that there's 4 people in business. One are E's, employees. S stands for small business, self-employed, or specialist. B stands for big business, and I stands for investor. And the thing of note here is that most people who go to school are programmed for the E and the S side. For example, it was my poor dad who always said to me, son, go to school so you can get a nice, safe, secure job. And so my poor dad wanted me to be an employee. And since the time I was a kid, get a safe, secure job, steady paycheck, and benefits. Okay? I didn't want to be an employee. And I said, Mom and Dad, I want to be a rich man. And I fight with my dad. So my mother finally said, son, if you want to be rich, my mother was a registered nurse. And she said, if you want to be rich, the richest people I know are doctors. So my mom wanted me to come over here, be a specialist or a small business person. I said, there's only one problem with that, Mom. Doctors are really smart. And she says, you got a good point there. I'm not going to be a doctor. So I went to school. I have a Bachelor of Science degree. I can drive ships and I can fly planes. I flew for the Marine Corps. But I've never used any of that education because I wanted to become a business owner. So it was my rich dad who basically said to me, become a business owner and learn to be a professional investor. So one of the big differences here between these people is that it's called taxes. See, in 1943, in the U.S., the federal government passed a law that said employees had to pay tax before they got paid. So when you get your paycheck from your employer, you open it up, and voila, the government's always taken a sizable chunk of it. And the harder you work and the more money you make, the more money they take from you. So that's why it's not that good to be an employee, because you can never get ahead, because the more you work, more money you make, the greater they pay in taxes. Now, the doctors, the lawyers, and attorneys, accountants were all laughing, saying, oh, these guys, they're getting paying a lot of taxes. So naturally, the federal government changed the laws again. And so in 1986 in the U.S., a thing called the 86 Tax Reform Act, and it basically took a lot of the benefits away from people who are self-employed, small business, doctors, and lawyers. So today in America, unfortunately, these guys pay the highest percentage in taxes. It is tragic. And a lot of people think they're investors, but what they're really doing is they're just giving their money to people like mutual funds, companies, and all that. So they're investing, but they're not really investors. See, the big tax breaks are on this side. The laws are pretty tight here, but this area is very, very gray. So by being a business owner on the right-hand side of the quadrant, you can make a lot more money and pay a smaller percentage of taxes legally. And the key word is legally. In the investor quadrant, it is possible to make millions of dollars and pay 0% taxes legally. But you've got to know the difference. So one of the beauties of business for the 21st century is it allows people to make the transition from the E and the S side to the B side especially. And so you can become a big business owner. And the difference between an S and a B, small business and big business, is most of these guys can't quit working. Most small business owners, if they stop working for more than a month, the business collapses. They don't really have a business. Most of these people own a job. So the beauty of business for the 21st century, it allows these people to make the transition to the B side so that you don't have to keep working hard for money, and the money can actually come in passively. Then once you have your business up and running, then I always recommend you then begin investing with your excess cash, paying less and less in taxes. And that's the reason the rich are getting richer. Debt. But if you're going to be financially intelligent today, you have to know there's good debt and bad debt. And simply put, good debt makes you rich, and bad debt makes you poor. As I said earlier, is that my rich dad taught me to be a rich man playing Monopoly. So the formula is a very simple one: 4 greenhouses, 1 red hotel. So let me say I have a house here, but it's my dream house, and I have a big mortgage. Interesting, the word mortgage means death, engaged until death. So if the cash is flowing out of your pocket every month, which most dream houses do, then that is bad debt. At the same time, if I have a green house and I still have a mortgage or debt, but the cash is flowing into my pocket, then that's good debt. So to be rich, the Rich Dad Company really believes that improve your financial IQ, noticing good debt and bad debt, and if you have good debt, you get richer and richer. If you have bad debt, which is debt that takes money out of your pocket every month, like your credit card, your car payments and stuff like that, then that's bad debt. So, in this day and age, it's important to know the difference. So anyway, I was thought I'd talk to you about asset protection, because if you're planning to be rich, you better build castles behind you. But today, we don't build castles with rock and stone. We build them with attorneys. And so I don't mean to be arrogant or flippant, but I was watching, Occupy Wall Street. All these people were yelling and screaming about the big corporations. They say they're ripping us everybody off. Well, that's your point of view, but this is my attorney here. His name is Garrett Sutton. He's a Rich Dad advisor, and he says start your own corporation. And the reason you want to start your own corporation is you're planning on being rich, you better build a castle. Because if you are stupid, like my poor dad, my poor dad was a great guy, but he lived in another era. He always said, my house is in my name. He was so proud of that, very middle class, The house is in my name. Well, my rich dad had corporations, and his house was inside a corporation, or an entity, as they called. My poor dad always said, my car is in my name. And my rich dad would say, my corporation owns my car. And the reason they have corporations is because they're like these castle walls. Because I don't care if we're medieval or into the future, people will cheat, lie, and steal. Some of your best friends. One of my business partners, bless his soul, he just passed away, but he found that his wife was stealing from him. I'm going, holy mackerel. She cleaned him out, and then, thank God he could get his money back. And then she sued him for divorce on top of it. So, this is the kind of world we live in. So you better have a castle. So Start Your Own Corporation is a book about asset protection. So one big thing I've already covered with you is I don't have too much in my name. I don't want anything in my name. Because anything's in my name, some scumbag, some cheat, lie, steal, crook, hi, I'm here, I'm your friend. Yeah. They'll steal alive. They'll steal from you. So anyway, you've got to protect yourself, and that's what this book's about. And the way the rich do it is through specialized attorneys like Garrett Sutton of the Sutton Law Center, but Start Your Own Corporation. If it hadn't been for Garrett's protection, years ago, 20-something years now, I'd have lost everything. So the point here is this. If you're planning on being rich, get this book. Read about it, understand it. Build your own castle walls. It doesn't cost that much, probably $1,000 to start your own castle. But you've got to have good legal advice, good accountants, and I trust Garrett implicitly. We've tested time now. I've been hit so many times, but they just bounce off those walls. I think it's kind of funny, personally. Because in my world, the world of, let's say, the rich, the 1% that Occupy Wall Street is not happy with, is the person that sues loses. In other words, the person that sues me loses. Now, if you can imagine that, I want you to think about that for a little while. You hear about the frivolous lawsuits and all this, but the real heart, in most cases, the person who does the suing loses. This is not what you think it is in the real world. So please pay attention to asset protection, because there's no sense attempting to get rich when the world is filled with scumbags. People who will lie, cheat, steal, marry you, rape you, do whatever you want for your money. Remember this, in desperate times, desperate people do desperate things, and we are in desperate times. So cover your assets.